welcome into Good Day Lubbock on this Thursday. I'm James Eckler.
Good morning to you. I'm Kristen Carroll. Just ahead for you this morning, DPS with advice on how to stay safe if you find yourself in a car crash. This after a mother and child were killed walking away from one near shallow water.
I think it should be a personal choice for everybody, but it shouldn't be a mandate anymore.
I feel personally that I'm going to be better safe than sorry.
COVID-19 cases trending down across the country, here in Lubbock too. The CDC's hesitancy to change its restrictions guidelines despite more states lifting mandates.
Canadian truckers protesting COVID-19 restrictions, how their fight could soon impact the U.S.
And how the Russia and Ukraine situation will likely have you paying more at the pump. We'll get to all of that. First, let's check in with Steve Devine and our forecast.
Thank you. 1 minute past 8, temperature now 32 degrees. And as we look in on the satellite view, just a few high clouds moving south through the area. That motion will continue, taking the cloud cover out of the area later this morning. Temperatures 37 degrees at the Plainview Airport. Lubbock is 32. We do have a 28 showing up over at the Hobbs Airport, but a lot of 30s on the map right now. Little light breeze puts our wind chill here at 23, Plainview at 28. So still a bit on the cold side. Considering the time of year, a pretty mild weather pattern for us. By lunchtime, we'll be back in the 50s. We'll peak at about 62 degrees this afternoon with that sunshine. Little bit of a breeze, which will drop off mid to late afternoon. Of course, there's a cold front on the way, so I'll have an update on what's ahead here in just a few minutes.
Thank you so much, Steve. A Fox 34 follow-up now on a mother and son killed trying to get help after a crash Friday night near shallow water.
His friends and family mourn the loss. Our Brittany Michelson joins us with the advice now from law enforcement if you ever end up in a similar situation.
24-year-old Nikki Neal and her 6-year-old son Malachi were walking away from a crash to get help when they were hit by a car. Family and friends are hurting, including Nikki's co-workers at Goodwill. They say she was a beautiful person with a big heart and a wonderful mother, and that Malachi had a beautiful smile and was full of love and happiness and loved his mom dearly. We talked with DPS to get some reminders for how to stay safe after you've been in a crash.
The safest thing is make sure you have, time and distance from the roadway. You don't want to be right there close to the roadway or in the roadway where other traffic could be coming.
Flowers and a pinwheel to honor Nikki and Malachi left in the median near where they died. DPS Sergeant Johnny Burris says after a crash, it's important that you get a safe distance away from the road and then call for help. He says out in the county in the dark, it can be hard to tell how far away and how fast cars are coming. And if you're driving, hard to see people and cars in the road.
If there's no lights too, and maybe there's no lights on your car, then you may want to try and safely let folks know that are coming up on it, hey, we do have, a vehicle that's in the roadway over here, and then hopefully they can be able to stop and help put their hazards on.
If you lose your phone or it's dead, and depending on how far away you are from help, you may start walking to find help. But Burris says to stay far enough away from the road. If you drive up on a crash, he says to watch out for your fellow Texans and stop to help.
And if all you can do is help them with the cell phone and a pair of hazard lights, then that's a lot better than them sitting there in the dark with no cell phone and no way to call for help.
If you're getting on the road, Burris says to let someone know before you take off and when you get home.
The best thing to do too is if you know you're going to be traveling, make sure that you have your phone charged before you leave, that you plug in that GPS before you take off, and that you have a charger with you too.
Support has already been pouring in for this family as they mourn and plan a funeral. I spoke with Malachi's dad on the phone, and he wants the community to know how much that support means to him. If you want to help this family, you can donate directly to the funeral home. We have that information at fox34.com. Brittany Michelson, Good Day Lubbock.
Well, we now know the name of the man who died in a crash near Lockney on Tuesday. State troopers tell us Christian Burciaga didn't stop at the intersection of US 70 and FM 378, ran into a semi and was killed in that crash. The truck driver went to a hospital and is expected to be okay.
A follow-up now on that house fire in South Lubbock we told you about yesterday. City codes enforcers, turns out, had previously marked that home as unlawful to occupy. The fire happened just before 7 near 77th and Avenue P. 4 dogs died, but firefighters were able to save one. A man and woman being treated for smoke inhalation. Neighbors called 911 saying they saw flames coming from inside. Crews were able to stop the fire from spreading to any other homes. Investigators aren't sure how that fire started yet. This is the fourth fire, though, that we've reported on this week. A Lubbock man who helped hide the body of a person his son killed will spend more than a decade in prison. 45-year-old Oscar Cerna, sentenced to 12 years after pleading guilty to tampering with a corpse. Cerna told police he helped hide the body of Jacob Duffy, the man his son shot and killed in 2017. Cerna admitted he helped hide the gun used in the murder and helped hide the body in a water drainage hole near 50th and Magnolia Avenue. Cerna's son, Oscar Cerna Jr., pleaded guilty to the murder. He is doing 45 years.
The UIL suspended the boys' varsity basketball coach at Roosevelt. John Miller, who's also the district's athletics director, is on a 5-game suspension and under 2 years probation. Sources tell us that Miller was at a junior high game against Idley last month when he started arguing with the game official. Referees told Miller to calm down or he would be ejected. Then Miller threw the officials out of the gym. The UIL Executive Committee found that to be a rules violation. Now, since there are only a couple games left this season, Miller's suspension will carry over into next year. LPD's enhanced enforcement on several stretches of road is now finished. The department reports it succeeded in stopping more speeders, including one driver doing over 100. They were focusing on I-27 from the New Deal city limits down to 82nd Street, as well as the Brownfield Highway from the Wolford city limits up to the Idalou Highway. You most likely saw them on the loop as well.
Our daily case count for COVID-19 in Lubbock is less than 100 again. The city reported 81 new cases yesterday, 1 additional death. That's the second time this week that we've been below triple digits. Texas Tech researchers, meanwhile, making some strides in COVID-19 testing. In 2020, we told you about the early prototype for the ultra-fast rapid COVID test. Now it's in the final stages of FDA emergency authorization. Instead of a nose swab, days of waiting on lab results, Tech's developed a saliva-based test. You just spit in the container, wait a couple minutes, and you got your results. The test can detect an early COVID infection, just like a PCR test. But with this one, the results are available on site.
So you could walk yourself into a pharmacy, even if you don't have it at home, through the drive-thru, put your saliva, and before you leave, shorter time than buying a burger at McDonald's.
Oh, look at me.
As soon as the FDA can prove it can keep up with the demand, it should hit the market here in the coming months. And the European Union has also taken an interest.
With a significant drop in COVID-19 cases all across the country, governors in some of the strictest states are easing rules and restrictions, including the use of masks indoors. But the CDC director says it's still too soon to change the guidance. New York and Illinois are among the latest states to end their COVID-19 mandates, which required masks in most indoor settings. But in both, face masks will still be required in schools.
It should be a personal choice to everybody, but it shouldn't be a mandate anymore.
I feel personally that I'm going to be better safe than sorry and continue wearing my mask.
Daily cases in the U.S. are down 44% over the last week. Hospital admissions down 25%, but deaths are up 3%. The CDC working on updating its guidance on mask wearing, but did not offer a timeline. Vaccines for kids under 5 are also under consideration and should be approved soon.
Thousands of Canadian truckers, part of the so-called Freedom Convoy, are calling for an end to all COVID restrictions in that country, and it may soon impact the United States. The mayor of Ottawa declared a state of emergency this week, while also asking for nearly 2,000 more police officers to help control the situation. Police are attempting to crack down on the demonstrations, ticketing more than 500 vehicles and arresting at least 20 people, while warning that those who supply the truckers with gas could be subject to arrest.
After the fuel, we're going after any vehicle conveyance, including horseback, people carrying jerry cans.
There's a similar convoy protest planned in the U.S., plans to travel from California to Washington, D.C. The White House making plans to help Americans in Ukraine if Russia invades.
A decision comes as more Russian forces move to the front lines.
Tensions escalating near Ukraine's border. Pentagon now planning for U.S. troops in Poland to help Americans evacuate Ukraine if Russia invades. The Wall Street Journal reports the White House approved a plan for U.S. troops to set up camps and checkpoints in Poland if needed. U.S. officials expect up to 5 million refugees to flee Ukraine if Russia attacks. An estimated 30,000 Americans are still in the country.
We have a range of diplomatic presences, not only in Ukraine, but in neighboring countries that are always available for U.S. citizens should they need assistance.
The U.S. and its allies continue building up their presence in NATO countries around Ukraine. About 100 American service members have arrived in Romania, with another 1,000 NATO troops on the way.
The focus of this particular mission, of course, is to reinforce the NATO alliance, to build that trust and confidence, to reassure our allies, and to strengthen the eastern flank of the NATO alliance.
Meanwhile, Russia moving more weapons near Ukraine's border, including short-range ballistic missiles and air defense systems. The country will also begin joint military drills with Belarus beginning Thursday. Defense officials say there are no signs of any Russian military pullback.
We believe that we are now in the window where they could take action, which is why the diplomacy is so intense and why we are so focused on trying to find another path.
Ukraine announced the start of its own 10 days of military drills beginning today. Well, several dozen protesters stood outside the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv to demand a peaceful solution to the tensions at the Russian-Ukraine border. Demonstrators waved banners, some with anti-U.S. messages, yesterday calling for a diplomatic solution to the conflict along the border. The protest stayed in an area cordoned off by police and dispersed peacefully. No incidents were reported.
Looking like the conflict between Ukraine and Russia could lead to you paying more at the pump. J.P. Morgan's projecting oil prices could soar to $120 a barrel if the conflict derails Russia's crude exports. A spike like this one would affect what you pay for gas daily. The forecast highlights how a potential invasion of Ukraine would cause wide-ranging ripple effects. Tensions between the two have already inflated oil prices in recent weeks, with Brent crude hitting $94 a barrel earlier this week. A house cat reunited with its owner 7 years after it was lost. The incredible distance it covered in their time apart, later in trending stories.
And Lubbock firefighters, friends, and family celebrating his 45th birthday. What makes this one so special? Plus a check of your full forecast with Steve after the break on Good Day Lubbock, now 8:12.